and then we will give it a minute or two before people start joining, because I know it takes a little bit before we start getting people joining.
Good to see you. How's it going?
Going pretty good.
Nice.
Are you in LA?
I'm in LA. Are you?
No, I'm in New York.
Nice.
There's not like I don't think there's not like a more Brooklyn coded background than this.
That's true. All right. Oh, I can retweet this now. Okay.
Is there something that I should be retweeting right now?
It looks like it just went live on the Octant.
I think. Yep. Let me send you the Twitter account link in the private chat here. How are your Mondays going?
It's going.
Yeah, it's been good. It was nice to have a little weekend. It's kind of the middle of like Oscar season, so there's like tons and tons of screenings, like they're for your consideration stuff. So just been a lot of late nights in LA, to be honest.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it is fun. You get to see a lot of documentaries that don't have distribution. I mean, it's like what we're going to talk about today. Like, I think there's so many amazing films right now that just don't have audiences, that don't have distribution, that don't. So, you know, it's been something that we've been able to experiment with the Ethereum community to try and figure some of that out. And we're lucky in that way that there's a really energized community behind these films and projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hi everyone. I see we got a few people joining us already. GM, we're back. It's Monday. Literally just less than 3 days left for the allocation window closing, and I know it's anxiety inducing, but it's really been fun. We've been here every day for the last 2 weeks, bringing you stories and conversations with some of the best creators in our industry, 30 of whom are obviously part of this Epoch. And a quick reminder for everyone, we do have a demo day tomorrow that's going to be starting at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, and you will get to hear from every single participant that's in this Epoch. So tomorrow is going to be a really fun, packed day, one day before the allocation window closes down. And so a lot of fun things coming up. I'm Mashal, and I am so honored and excited to have this chat. Like, I think one of my favorite parts of this job is really just being able to work with builders and creators and some of the coolest people in this industry. And I don't take that lightly. So that's enough about me. Zach, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us more about your project.
Sure. My name is Zach Ingrasci. I'm the director of a feature documentary called Vitalik, an Ethereum story. Actually, People Pleaser helped us launch the whole project with an incredible NFT cover art that we did this big crowdfund back in 2021 that fully funded the project. We used mirror.xyz. And this whole film has been this experiment of how can you use Ethereum to create a mainstream feature documentary that's going to end up on a streamer. And the film follows Vitalik and incredible builders as we went towards the merge. That was kind of the backbone of the story. And now, 4 years later, these documentaries take so long to make. We're launching on Amazon Prime streaming later in October. So yeah, just really excited. It's been a crazy journey, and this Epoch has been a perfect timing because we want to supercharge that launch. As many of you know, the algorithm is everything when you hit a streamer. So we really want to make a robust kind of marketing play and bring in millions of new viewers who don't know this story, who don't have kind of a human perspective. Mostly in our film, that's through Vitalik and builders like Danny Ryan and Justin Drake and Ixshells, who's this incredible artist in Panama. And that's really what we want to bring, is an accessible story where we don't use the jargon, we don't use the kind of insider baseball, and it's a story that really can connect to the hearts and minds of people in kind of every day on a platform like Amazon. So That's what we're doing with this project, is how do we supercharge this launch with diving back into our vault of content. I mean, we have hundreds of hours of footage that we shot. We have like even this incredible conversation between People Pleaser and Ixchels way back in Portugal that like brings up all these things that didn't quite fit in the film, but like it's so powerful, and we want to like re-release all of that, collaborate with influencers, and have a traditional marketing plan. So that's what we're here kind of excited about, is bringing this to the mainstream. So our project is called Ethereum Story Goes Mainstream.
Amazing. Thank you, Zach. And we're going to get into that, the story, the inception, and all of the cool aspects that people don't know and are excited to learn more about. But in the meantime, tell us more about Shibuya, and tell us more about White Rabbit and your project.
Hi, it's People Pleaser, or I go by Emily as a normal person. And I think that it's super special to be here with Zach because of our collaboration we did a few years, like 4 years ago now. Time really flies. And it was honestly, I think, what you guys did with the crowdfund for the Ethereum film initially did serve as such a big inspiration for so many people, including myself. Like, I think in sort of like doing that collaboration with you guys made me realize, oh yeah, like obviously, crypto has always been really good for sort of efficient capital formation, but I think that it is worth mentioning and like spotlighting the sort of like cultural aspect of it, or people who are doing something that's a little bit more creative. And I love that you guys are telling the Ethereum story from like a more human, and also like just because so much of the coverage about crypto is so like speculative and monetary, and there's just not enough people talking about not just the human side of it, but also the creative side of it too. And then so through that, I was also inspired to basically start White Rabbit, which is like our sort of anime like web series that I made with my co-founder, Mache Kuchiara, like legendary artist in the field. And so we had released around a minute of animation to begin with this sort of like novel choose your own adventure mechanic at the time, that also served as like basically a method for crowdfunding. And then so through that, we were able to successfully like raise the funds that we needed to complete the rest of the anime. And as Zach said, a lot of these things take a long time. So for us, it was a 2.5 to 3 year journey of completing this, what would be like 30 minutes of animation. And we released them in chapters online throughout, which then, ultimately all of the chapters were able to be like stitched together to make like one, I would say, consecutive film. But when we released them in chapters, the audience that we like released them with, or like our White Rabbit community, which was mostly done on Ethereum, were able to basically participate in different ways, like, vote on the main character's name, or decide certain like different plot points. So in some ways it was not only grassrooted, but it was also sort of co-produced and co-created alongside the community. And basically it was a really cool learning experience and organic journey to get here. And then I think it kind of tied the bow nicely as like a finish on the project when we won an Emmy this year for basically I think it was like, it was Outstanding Innovation in Emerging Media, because of the way, like the very unique way that like White Rabbit was created. And I think my personal sort of favorite aspect of this is that all of the people that, sort of like helped bring it to life, like that we are calling producers, like basically in the credits, when we like released it, like everybody was using their ENSs or their like wallet addresses. So and then that is still present in the film today, and like based on how much you participated and stuff, it dictated like like how high up like you literally ranked in the credits, which I think is really important to point out, because like this just shows that it could be the beginning of like kind of like a democratization of the producer role, because really all creatives need like to basically, and filmmakers to make their like visions come true, is just resources to make it happen. And then so that's kind of how Shibuya was born too, is just out of like a dream of basically repeating the Ethereum film model or like the White Rabbit model, and basically use this like technology layer to help enable more filmmakers and more creators to be able to make something like, Zach and I didn't have to go the traditional route and like pitch to a bunch of, traditional studios and stuff, because everybody knows how difficult that can be. And if there are people like, or enough distribution, or like people with resources to spare within the crypto space, I think that this can hopefully demonstrate that there can be very valuable pieces that are born out of this, like with the resources that are gathered, that are not just like a financial or speculative instrument, and that it can do like real work and sort of telling stories and spreading the message like in the world in like a cultural way. So just really happy to be here and like share our stories. And I think it's really cool that we are now in the same virtual room again like this.
Yeah, it's a cool way of things coming full circle in a way. So I love that. So one thing you really spoke about, which is important, right? Like resources that are scarce, of course, right? And to make any creative vision come to life, that is so important. Funding is so crucial. So let's walk back to your initial phase when you came up with the concept. How did you go about, and of course, like you've mentioned, and given us like snippets of like the fact that there's actual co-producer roles that a lot of contributors have been able to get. How was it like when you were starting off and when you first had the concept and idea, and walk us through the first very initial stage pre-funding? What are the options that were available for anyone who's watching and not familiar? And one of the goals here is to make obviously a lot of this content more accessible, but what was that like, or what are some of the challenges that you would face and that you experienced?
Emily, do you want to start?
You can go first.
Okay, yeah. I think, for us, the documentary space right now, and even in 2021, is pretty tough, right? Like the stuff that's being funded up front is true crime, celebrity, and sport docs. Like that's kind of it. And so for independent films to happen, you have to be super scrappy. And like really it's like either you find donations, grants which like take years to hear back from. Like it's an incredibly slow and opaque process. And you basically have to make something on a shoestring budget and hope that it's going to sell later. And so it's pretty limited. I mean, and I've been making documentaries for 15 years. We've had films on Netflix, we have filmed on HBO, we've filmed on Nat Geo. Like we've been through this process many times, but it's pretty tough. And when in March 2021, I got to meet Vitalik, and having grown up in a family that was all obsessed, my dad was obsessed with open source. Like I used Ubuntu as like my operating system as a kid, right? I thought that was normal until I went to school and everyone's like, what's Ubuntu? Like, but this was like meeting Vitalik. I was like, oh, this is like the biggest experiment in open source, like in the last decade. And there's like those same kind of ideals, and the cypherpunk ideals like were so embodied by him that I was like, this is a really fascinating story. And obviously 2021 was like right after DeFi summer, and like leading into the NFT space kind of boom, and it was a really interesting time, and we knew that the merge was coming, this like really needed thing. So it just felt like this perfect time to start a documentary. And in normal traditional methods, we would have just been like kind of for like a year pitching this story. And luckily we were like, we met Linda Shea, who's like this incredible person in the Ethereum community, has been educating everyone. And she became a co-producer. We met over a tweet, and she was thinking about doing a documentary, and we were like, let's make this together. And she kind of helped us through this process of understanding what it'd be to launch like this crowdfund where people get NFTs as supporters and get credits in the film by supporting as well and being part of this community. And really documentaries are collaboration, so like being part of this film. And luckily with her and the team at Mirror.xyz, we launched our crowdfund, and within 52 hours had like basically funded our film. And what that allowed us to do was like launch straight into the story, right? A story that was unfolding. We had no idea where it was going. Like, and we were able to capture really authentic moments as, you know, over the next 3 years, kind of ending in Zuzulu with Vitalik, and that would never have been possible without this kind of crowdfund and community behind it. And not only was it like the funding, but it allowed us to bring together a community for the film, like these group of collaborators that helped us find different builders. Like we never would have met Ixchels had we not met Emily. Like there was like all these kind of connections of people who became really core parts of the film, because of that crowdfund, because it like built this kind of community around the film from the very beginning, which is really kind of a special thing in the Ethereum community. And I can talk later about the distribution side, because that's been a really cool part of this too, that has come out of the crowdfund, but it kind of all started in that July 2021.
That's incredible. And yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of questions, even around like creative decision making, that we're going to get into. But Emily, tell us how your experience was, and how did you approach it? And yeah, how did you go about it? Oh, wait, I think you're muted. There we go.
I was trying to unmute at the same time. Yeah, I think for us, White Rabbit really, I think with many other creatives, really people just start with an idea that or kind of like a story that they want to tell. I think my co-founder and I are particularly fond of and fans of any stories that tell around technology, but also have a sort of more philosophical element behind it as well. Some huge, obvious references that we had, or just like inspirations for like The Matrix, Black Mirror, Love, Death, and Robots, even this highly underrated animated series called Pantheon. So if anybody ever has time, please go watch. They didn't pay me to say that. It's just a really good series. But I think, yeah, it's just kind of like the types of people that even are, I think, drawn to a technology space like crypto will naturally also be interested in these types of stories that are being told. And so, I mean, you know, we literally use the term like being red pilled in the industry, right? So I think anything to do with like The Matrix or sort of like Alice in Wonderland, and just any types of stories around like paradigms and like new ways of thinking, or being able to like teleport into a new world. I think it represents like hopes and dreams, and these are all things that we wanted to embody like in our work. And I think a lot of that really is White Rabbit. And, you know, my personal work also, just from like the 2021 era, if people have like been following back then, always included Easter eggs and like symbolism that either had to do with crypto or just any types of cultural widgets in the space. And so White Rabbit sort of is an extension of that as well, but it also talks about beyond technology, like, you know, there's crypto, AI, like if you watch it, but also I think there's more philosophical elements to it as well, such as like overcoming challenges and sort of, you know, like the sort of whole like when should you listen to like signal to noise ratio, like when should you listen to the masses versus like trusting your own instincts, and how do you navigate times of turbulence and being like self-assured and like listening to your own inner voice. Like these are all themes that we explored in the film. And so it all kind of started there. And, you know, we have all these great ideas, but we need money and a team to make this happen. And so this always, yeah, just like kind of goes back to the whole conversation around resources, right? And like, I think that, you know, if anybody had ever spent enough time just being not just in the visual effects space, which is sort of like my own background, but also like in animation, and, you know, people like in animators, they work so hard, and actually it's a pretty notoriously like underpaid space, because people sort of like work out of passion. And I think sometimes within, you know, just crypto in general, people can get so lost in the sauce that you know, they kind of like forget that there are like these people out there who can really generate like real value, that are more sort of in the creative language. And so, you know, when we started Shibuya, like if people are interested, they can go on our website. It's called Shibuya.film. Like since White Rabbit, we've been able to help like co-produce and like give out grants and basically work with other creators to help realize like their dreams of making like a short film. So there's 5 more of those out now that are just like free to watch. And honestly, people should watch them because they're made to be watched, and it really is like a sort of creation out of like love and labor. Like these filmmakers are not even making money off of creating these. Like it's all just because they have these stories that they are passionate about telling, and they're just like going out and just not just the filmmakers themselves, but the actors to like, either if it's an animation, then there's animators, or if it's live action, then it's like the film crews. Like everybody is just pouring in their times and hearts and souls and labors to create something, just so we can sort of like watch it and feel something and all relate to something. And I think that's the beauty of the whole industry of filmmaking and storytelling. And so I hope that people in the crypto space, or especially with Ethereum, like can realize that the impact of like a lot of people coming together can really help these filmmakers create a lot more than just I think DeFi apps and everything are really wonderful too, but there are other things outside of like financial instruments that can also benefit from these. And so nothing can sort of convince people more than just watching a film that moves you, right? Like if you watch one that moved you, then you can be like, okay, this is something that I can get behind. So don't take it from me. Go out and speak to animators and filmmakers and connect with them. And like, because if these people are not like able to get the resources, then the stories that we like to watch and consume will also dry out, and we're going to end up in like a future where we're just watching like slop or just a sort of like really lazy pieces of art, because the resources are not there for the people who really are like passionate about pouring in the time and like effort and labor into finessing their craft. And so, yeah, I think that's just sort of like the mission that really I'm here to preach.
Absolutely. And I think there's so many different points that you spoke about, but one of my favorite ones, of course, right? Like art that moves you is so important for this world and for all of us. And of course, I love garbage TV. That's just a personal, it's not even a guilty pleasure. I've got a brain rot from short content too. That's fine. But I think there's nothing more beautiful than art that moves you in different formats, right? And this is why we had a really good chat actually over the last couple of streams where we spoke about short form, and then we spoke about how important authenticity in long form also is. And there is an appetite, and it is important that we have different formats, because there are people who are craving in a world that's obviously very much incentivizing rage bait and short form content. If you can build your own presence, there is space for everybody, and people will pay for that too. And that is a bigger conversation. But I just think even from a crypto and Ethereum perspective, we are not shaping the headlines we want to see. And I think it's because we don't have enough work being done from a media legitimacy perspective. And they're like, if you're from the media space, you just understand how image building works, how soft image works over time, right? To change the perception of crypto as a scam, we need better headlines, but we also need more just work that people can watch and consume on mainstream. And we're not seeing that. I mean, crypto exposés are a different story. That's a whole, like, again, that's a very different genre in itself, right? But a lot of the ideals that have inspired so many people in this space and have actually made people want to change careers and lives almost, right? To fully devote themselves to wanting to live by certain ideals and work in this space and whatnot. They're not translated in anything that we're seeing online. Maybe some aspects are changing, but even outside of it, like there's way more conversations about gambling and scams and quick get rich schemes, which so many in the space are not for. Like, yes, of course there are people who want that, but there's so much more. And I think that's why both of your films make such a big difference, because they are a different alternative. And so empowering funding, most importantly, makes such a big difference in what people can even think about. And these are, again, longer term plays as well, that need to be worked on, right? Seeing so many more films that are funded, and even being able to have research, like, again, in a space that's abundant with funding and grants. It is a shame we don't have more films being funded and more work being funded. And even let's now talk about the second part of this, right? So there's the initial funding aspects, but what goes into actually producing a film that is even ready for like a streaming service, and like what does that look like? What are some of the resources? Because I think there are some misconceptions around initial fundraising. And I know a lot of times people with pitchforks are ready to ask, hey, why would they need funding? Why are they trying to get funding again? Let's get into some of that aspect. Why is funding needed for, like, what are the next steps post filming? And what do you need for this to succeed and to be able to do more of this and even to get more visibility and eyeballs? Zach, let's start with you, and then Emily will go over to you.
Yeah, well, before we jump into that, I mean, I think even this Epoch is a perfect example of like seeing the appetite for long form, in-depth content, which like the Tornado project seems to be getting a lot of funding, which is so cool. Like that is a, audio series that would never be funded outside of something like this, right? Something that actually looks at it without kind of just the pure like scam true crime angle, and that's huge. So I'm really excited about. There's so many cool projects in this Epoch that I'm just stoked that are getting a lot of funding. I think the reality is these projects are incredibly time. If you're gonna like create something that's worthy to be on Amazon Prime or Netflix or any of these kind of platforms or win an Emmy, like they're incredibly time intensive, right? And like even though we got all this funding up front, like we used every single cent of that to travel around the world. I was in Ukraine with Vitalik, like, Montenegro, Colombia, Portugal, Berlin. Like you're literally getting called up and like bringing a team the next day to be there. Animation is like incredibly time intensive, right? For it to be at kind of a premier level that like mainstream just expects now when they're watching a film or a series. And, we're actually operating on very small budgets compared to these mainstream projects, right? And so we're competing with like these really well-funded true crime series, cult series, all these things that are like grabbing eyeballs, and to create something that's going to compete with that, like it's really resource and time intensive, and you need to be able to work with the best creatives in the game. And so by the time you get to distribution, you have no money for marketing. You have no money for like anything. And so we actually started from right away. I mean, we have a distributor, right? We've worked with them for many years. They've had our films on Netflix, all these things, but like they don't have budgets for distribution either. Like it's a really tough time to get eyeballs on your piece, even when they are on these major platforms. So right away we started experimenting. So we launched the trailer on Zora, and it went super viral in Zora, and it allowed us then, with that money, we allowed us to do this like world premiere in 24 different countries, like 32 different cities, all on the same day. Like all of them were basically sold out. People from all over the world on this day kind of came together in the Ethereum community and were able to watch our film in real life, in person. We then right away launched a like a NFT ticket gated stream of the film without like, don't tell the streamers because you're not really supposed to do this. But we wanted to show the community around Ethereum. And with those funds, that's where we start building our kind of treasure chest for the marketing of the film when it launches later in October. And it's so critical that when you do launch, that you have real resources to pay for a publicist so that you're actually getting headlines. Like you said, like how do we get positive headlines? Well, the only way to do that is to be on an Amazon Prime or a Netflix or one of these things, or win an Emmy. And it takes so much work to get there that once you're there, you don't want to blow it. So you need the resources to like actually make that happen. And so that's where it's really exciting to have these resources and the resources we built up by selling tickets for the stream of the film, the limited stream of the film, or the live IRL kind of premieres, and as we prepare for this much bigger launch.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of speaks to what you said. You got to be scrappy, and it is time consuming, and you are dedicating a lot, which is quite different than having like a cushy job in a big production firm and being able to, work at one of the bigger players. Like it is such a different route that people really don't get to appreciate and understand. And so I think there is a lot of commitment, and I think we are so thankful from the Ethereum community to see both you and Emily, and to see the amount of work that's gone into this whole body of work, right? Because the filming part is obviously one side. There are so many other aspects. And yeah, I've been very happy to see Tornado and David also be highly ranked from the community side. There are so many incredible projects, but again, seeing years of work following him as a journalist and obviously following the Rage and their excellent coverage of the Roman storm trials, like just seeing the community also really just understand that has been very cool. So I'm excited to see all the bodies of work that we're going to see from everyone who gets funded this Epoch. Emily, tell us more about your perspective here as well, right? In terms of what it takes and what the funding and how the funding can make a difference as well in terms of, from post filming to, and obviously with animations, like there's so much more work in time and effort and work that goes into it. So tell us more about what that looks like and what your experience was.
Yeah, definitely. I think for animation, obviously there's so many different sort of steps down the pipeline. From the very beginning, it's like storyboarding. Storyboard artists are a specific sort of skill set, and then you go into actual concept art, and then after concept art, if you're making like a 3D animation, which for example White Rabbit is, then you have to hire people who do models, so modeling, and you have to create all the 3D models of everything that you see, from like the background sets to the characters, to props, right? And then after the modeling is done, then you have to have riggers who then come basically place skeletons inside everything, even if it's not just like an actual character, but if it's like a rock or something that needs to be animated, sometimes like they need rigs done as well. And then after rigging is done, then you have texturing and shading, and then look development, which are all different like parts of the pipeline. And then you have people who are the actual animators who like move them, right? And this is typically done like frame by frame. And so that's really where a lot of the time and intensive labor is coming from. I'm not going to sit here and explain like every single part of the animation pipeline, but long story short is there's a lot. So obviously animation is very expensive and costs a lot, but I think if we zoom out to just sort of like the broader filmmaking landscape, as Zach was saying, or even an example of like Anora, which was the movie that won Best Picture last year. If you look at their budget for the film, it's considered an independent film, and their budget was $6 million, which in the grand scope of Hollywood is very little. But if you look at how much they spent on marketing for the Oscars, they spent, I think, around $18 million just for marketing in order to win all of the Academy Awards. Now, obviously, I think there's a different sort of like pipeline for that neither I don't think Zach or I are a part of, because we don't have those types of budgets or access. But this is just an example of everything that costs money that is involved in making something. Because I feel like people in crypto are often really quick to point out like when something hasn't like gone mainstream, or like people haven't, but it's like there's actually so much work that goes into like every step of the way. And even just looking at this giant hill that you have to climb just to even get like a mention, and even something as big as like a Nora needs to spend $18 million to even be noticed by people of the Academy, is just it's really saying a lot. But all of that still, I think, something that is worth celebrating, even in just these two projects alone, is the fact that we even got it made. I think like just getting something made is so hard these days, because Hollywood is just sort of typically only funding things that are like the super big franchises. Like if you're not a Marvel movie, or if you're not a remake, like sequel, prequel, live action remake or of something, like then you are just not going to get funded. And so even just getting something original like off the ground and completed, I think that's alone just like a huge feat that is worth celebrating. And then of course it's like the cherry on top that we could get recognition, like being on a major streaming platform like Amazon Prime, or like awards like the Emmys. Actually, when I was talking to one of the Emmys judges post like Emmys, like they basically told us, so it's pretty cool. Like if you, first of all, like this kind of stuff helps Ethereum, because like, for example, when we won the Emmy, like when we were like doing our acceptance speech on stage, we literally were like, thank you to the Ethereum community, because this film literally was not possible like if it wasn't for Ethereum. And things like this do help spread like a positive message about Ethereum to the world, that is not just like something that is financially related. But also the Emmy judge was talking about how when they were looking through the sort of like applicants and stuff, it was also like something like a concept of Shibuya that sort of like signaled as like a beacon of hope for future filmmakers that also kind of like touched them, and they wanted to sort of amplify that as a signal to future people of like, this is something, if it's not just Shibuya, but other people should be building stuff like this too, because it kind of takes stuff like that in order for the industry to change. And the entire filmmaking industry is just like in such a weird spot right now. So for that, we were like super lucky. And I also think that it's really cool. Like if you guys go to the Wikipedia page of like the Emmys, like categories, like especially for the one that we won, like on the network side, like, you know, basically they'll show like all the networks like of the projects that won. And it's always like, you know, Netflix, Hulu, like Apple, like, you know, everybody's like super like CBS, whatever. And then like at the bottom, there's like Shibuya, which is like something probably like nobody's ever heard of. But I do think that it's worth people, you know, not just myself, but other people sort of like building and like putting stuff like this out there as a beginning, because like if we don't try, then like no difference is ever even going to be made. And I think a lot of the ethos and philosophy behind something like crypto or Ethereum is to go out there in the world and make changes and not just accept the status quo. And so I think a lot of this just like embodies like what we're here about. And, you know, specifically for Shibuya, I think that you know, depending on the amount that gets funded, I think we have like an array of different like ideas. Like if it's like on the more side, then we could basically dedicate those as grants to other filmmakers to make more like projects like the ones you guys see on the site. And then if it's on the lesser side, I think it would be more like, you know, sort of giving back to the community. I know people like love the idea of an Emmy, and they are at all Emmy-winning producers if they help produce a film. And these things often don't feel real until you're able to actually like see one or like get up close to one. And so, you know, one of the ideas that we had would be, you know, like starting from like a city or something, we could run like a free screening of White Rabbit and then bring the trophy with us so that people, you know, in the city who are in the Ethereum community can show up, watch a free movie, take a picture with a trophy, just to understand the impact of like, this is a real tangible thing that your, you know, original contribution had resulted in. So those are kind of like the things that we're thinking about as this project. But regardless, we're just going to keep building towards this like mission and hopefully become like a permissionless protocol for more creativity.
I want to see it in a theater so badly. It's so good. The work is so incredible, and like watching it on my, you know, computer screen like doesn't give it justice. So very excited for that.
Same. I'm really excited to see it, and I'd love to see it on this big screens too. You know, I think you mentioned a couple of points that are so important in like changing the status quo, because I know that like really does matter to so many people in our community, but also just the fact that we already have like 2 success stories here, right? Having 2 films completed, and you're right, like that is something that is and should absolutely be celebrated, as the fact that we have two actual films that are ready and that we have in the world, and that in itself is such a big accomplishment, because we didn't have that up until a few years ago. So it's literally just like the first steps that are going towards this, and it helps build an appetite. But there is even like the success of how well these are done also shows the potential of what else can and should get funded, because the other part about it is the eyeballs and you know what can determine success for streaming services, for example. I know there's a lot that goes into the metrics and decision making there, or what gets highlighted. So we will get into that. But something that you also just mentioned right now, which is 18 million that went into the press side and promoting and marketing Anora, right? And there was absolutely a phase where all I saw on my timeline was news about Anora and the wins and the Oscar wins, right? And so like I think that in itself, there are so many people do not understand. And I think from the media side, again, this is the part where if you're seeing headlines, it is not happening in a vacuum. No one randomly learned about, you know, an Ethereum film from like waking up and thought, hey, this is what I'm going to write. There is absolutely a process. People don't realize how media features happen, how you get featured constantly, publicists working, the pitching, the relationships with journalists, and more importantly, relationships that can help get press in a time where tech is demonized and crypto is demonized by mainstream tech and media publications because of a misconception. It's a lot easier to say, oh, here's another 20 million new like crypto scam, versus saying, here is a really interesting movie that actually sheds a positive light. Like, these things don't happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of work, and I think the easier it looks, the tougher it is. So if you're seeing a lot of headlines and visibility, please consider amplifying that. I think that's another thing that's important from this space. It does not take a lot. No one's asking you for funding. If you are literally on Twitter scrolling and seeing news about Vitalik the film or White Rabbit or Shibuya, like, go and amplify it, engage with it. The more visibility that and strength that you can show, I think the more important it is for even like just perception, and that's important. And I think that's like the bare minimum that we can do from a community perspective. But going back to you too, what can the community do now that we're going to see now that we're going to see the film? Like, one, where can people access the film in the next few months in this year, and what can people do when you get to that stage as well, if you're already on that stage?
Yeah, I mean, already I think what's cool about this community is people do that. They amplify in a really incredible way. I mean, even like the biggest names in the space like really care about these stories. And from like Base, who did an incredible, supported our like international premieres all around the world, and Matcha, and like there's just so many incredible people that have been really, really supportive. So I think more than making any of the films I've made in the past, this has been a really cool experience in that way. So like, just first of all, it's just so hugely grateful.
Shout out to Base and Matcha. I love their teams. They're just so incredible to work with.
They're like really great. And I think when we launched so the film is already available globally on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, but all for like purchase. It's not like free streaming yet. So people can watch immediately. If you go to ethereumfilm.xyz, you can find all of that. But obviously people don't want to pay for content now. Like, people want free content, right? So that's where streamers are so important. So the film is actually like, we can see on the back end through our distributor that the film is greenlit at Amazon Prime, like ready to go. They just haven't given us our exact date, which is very frustrating, because I mean, the reality is the documentary space, the like traditional mainstream space, is so far behind technology wise. Like, we're still in the dark ages. Like, it truly is crazy that I can't even see like live analytics of how many people are buying the film on Apple or Amazon or any of these platforms. Like, as a filmmaker, there's so many middlemen, and there's so like it's just such an opaque process that we have very little information when we release these films into the world. So you really are relying on, we saw that it trended on Apple's like new docs list, right? And that's like all you get to know until like a year later, when your distributor, you get the paycheck and there's like some analytics there. So it's really crazy, but we know that it's so important, like the day that it launches, that people amplify, and that we get headlines, and that we get collaborations, and we're talking about the film. And so that's kind of all we can prepare for. Who knows? Hoping, like, it's true, they promised by the end of October that it's going to be live, but you don't really know, right? So we're ready to go. But I think that distribution side is still frustrating, like, in this space. And I mean, I really hope that as Ethereum, and I mean, the difference between 2021 using Ethereum on like a crowdfund to today, like, already there's like huge improvements, right? Like, it's just so much more accessible and easy for people to use. So it's like, even seeing that process is totally incredible. So we've kind of been able to, like, these films that we've created are such, like, it's so meta how much we've used the technology to create a film about the technology, that it's been a very fun experiment. And I think it's only going to get easier for creatives and filmmakers to kind of use these tools as things progress. Did I answer your question? I kind of like forgot what the question was.
You did. You did. Which is, I think, one, people can obviously go and buy the film, and then when it is ready to stream it, And I think like that's the date that you're waiting for. So we're all going to be waiting in anticipation too. And I hope you get the date very soon. And of course, on the Octant side, we're going to amplify this, once it is ready.
Great.
Emily, what about your take? How and where can people access White Rabbit, and how can people support?
Yeah, well, I think for White Rabbit, really it's just go watch it. It's free on her site, Shibuya.film. It was made to be watched, and actually same with the other short films on there too. And the other ones I think are more of like a pilot. And so if you watch any of the other ones and they like specifically moved you, you can go on the platform and support like a following episode for those other creators as well. You can literally give like $1. And so, or you can just watch it. I think a lot of when it comes to sort of like creations is just people watching and appreciating. And then also through word of mouth, like if you watch something and it moved you, tell your friends about it and then have them watch it too. And so that's really all creators want at the end of the day, is for people to consume and appreciate their work.
Absolutely, and amen to that. I do want to ask another question, and this is again out of pure curiosity, right? Because we did touch on this with all of our past streams. Did you have to make creative decisions based on attention spans, and keeping that in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. For White Rabbit, I think there was, because we released it in chapters, and then there were, and again, animation is so time consuming and labor intensive. So often we would spend months, and then what would come out on the other side is just a few minutes of animation. And so we would like, it would be like months go by, and then we release a little bit of animation. And sometimes people are like, oh, is that it? And we're like, well, it definitely, and I don't think we've like nailed or found the perfect solution yet. It definitely is a balance between like trying to keep a certain quality level and like really dedicating the time towards that, but then also trying to maintain or like the retention of your communities, like, because people get distracted all the time. And we definitely have seen, like rises and dips like between the chapter releases. So that's something that we historically have been sort of facing as like a challenge. But I do, this is maybe like maybe not in this industry, but like sometimes could be a controversial statement. I am optimistic about, new technologies like AI to help sort of lower the like the entry level, but also be able to lower like time and production costs for artists and creators to realize their ideas. And so hopefully, as technology gets better, that kind of like buffer time to maintain a certain quality in between will also get shorter as well.
Yeah, no, I echo that too. I mean, just like, how do we empower scrappy creators to create at a highest level, but without removing like the artistry, right? And that's what we're aiming for. And I think, yeah, I mean, so with a documentary, like everyone thinks, you shoot hundreds of hours, and to get it into a 90-minute film, it took a year and a half to edit, like full time, every day, 12-hour day, like editing a film, because these issues and these stories are so complex. To like remove that barrier of entry to actually make it accessible takes so much energy and time of figuring it out. I mean, we made 30 different versions of this film, like, and we tested those with audiences because we wanted to make sure it was accessible. And we learned very quickly that any sort of jargon totally threw people, right? So how do you explain what Ethereum is without using any of the words that we think we normally use to explain Ethereum, right? So even even using the word blockchain, or like, it truly, we had to remove all of this stuff to make it as accessible as possible. And we used a lot of animation, which is super time intensive, to at least visualize this world that we're talking about. And so you'll see in the documentary a lot of visualization of, and incredible artists like Emily are featured, and Nick Shells, and all these different people who are using this technology, but inside of this world that's meant to represent Ethereum and give it some sort of like emotional resonance, right? And that just took a ton of time and energy, and to make it I mean, with all these films, like, yes, they're educational, like, yes, they're beautiful, but they also have to be entertaining. So you have to like hold someone's attention for a full 90 minutes, which is like an incredible feat. And even, you know, even 30 minutes, like really anything that's longer than 30 seconds, like it's a huge feat in storytelling to hold someone's attention. We are lucky in the sense that if you set expectations that this is a film that you're sitting down to watch, there are very different expectations than, you know, a 3-minute TikTok video. Like they're just, you aren't sitting there to scroll. Like there just is a different approach when you're sitting down to watch a movie. So in some ways, when it's on an Amazon Prime, you're lucky, and like that's what people are coming to do. So you have a little bit of a higher bar, but it's still so easy to be like, oh, this is not moving, I'm going to move on. Or I'm confused or whatever. So much of our time was actually like testing, like, how do we tell the story in a way that you could send this film to your mom and she's going to understand, and she's going to get, at least, she might not be able to explain what Ethereum is, but she gets like what the core values are, right? That like, oh, you want to challenge the status quo. You want to create a system without the middlemen that are getting in the way. You want to have a community-based technology that's like empowering countries all over the world that are breaking down borders. Like that's what we want people to leave with. And that's the challenge too. It's like, how do you get that across that's like that people actually trust and they believe in it and that they emotionally resonate with it? And so yeah, it was the hardest film I've ever made by far. Like, you know, and I've made 5 feature docs and 15 short films, and like, you know, all over the world, lived in refugee camps and, you know, all over the place. But like this was a real challenge because it's such a technical language that is used, and you have to find something that's like more human, more accessible than that. So I hope we got somewhere close to that goal.
30 versions is crazy. That is
Yeah.
wild. Like 30 versions. And I think it kind of speaks to what a lot of us on the marketing front probably already know, right? Which is jargons don't work, make things as accessible as possible. And to get to more people, we need to put on the work to make the space more inclusive and more just, you know, less complications and more clarity. I think that's important. And I think we could all do with more of that. I know we're the last stretch of this hour, and this has been an incredible conversation. So a couple of reminders for anyone who's watching. One, thank you if you've stayed on till the end. I see we've got over 500 people that are still with us. So thanks for watching. And for anyone who's joining in later too, please check out both these projects on our projects page. Allocations are open until 22nd of October. And we don't have a lot of time left. So please go allocate to both of them. Zach, what is the title of your project? And Emily, what's yours as well, just for anyone who's watching and is not familiar?
Yeah, if you go to my project is Ethereum Story Goes Mainstream on the Epoch 9. And if you just go to @EthereumFilm on X or ethereumfilm.xyz, you can read more about it. You can see what we're posting. We also have we did a series of 5 short films as well. If you go to ethereumfilm.xyz, there's all these incredible stories like Uniswap or Gitcoin or Constitution DAO, like all these things that didn't make it into the film that we created into short films that also got a ton of views this summer as we were launching. And there's just so many great stories. I'm so glad that, you know, more are being told, and this is hopefully just the beginning.
Our project is called Shibuya. I'm not sure, actually. I mean, I know on the Epoch 9 it's called Shibuya, but when we were submitting the application, I think I wasn't super clear on the sort of like the headliner or something. So I think it was just like, it might be something related to an Emmy tour. I'm not really sure. It doesn't do a very good job, admittedly, explaining what Shibuya is. So honestly, the best thing you can do is just go on our website and watch the films. They're mostly pretty short. And then so, you know, the shortest ones are like 6 minutes. The longest one is like 27 minutes. But really, that's sort of like the ethos of the platform itself, is just to continue to enable other creators to be able to create and also tell stories, but hopefully amplify Ethereum and what Ethereum is capable of through beautiful and high quality storytelling. Yeah, you can also go follow us on X. We are @Shibuya.film. And yeah, feel free to chat about our films like anytime. But yeah, honestly, the best thing you can do is just watch them.
Amazing. And I think just before we wrap up in the last few minutes, really, can you also just talk a little bit more about what funding differences can make? So for anyone who's allocating and can make a difference, because again, your allocations for anyone who's watching, you can change those up until the last minute, and we do see rankings change over time. So what does this funding unlock for Shibuya and for you?
So super quickly, like in the case of White Rabbit, which no longer needs funding. So the funding would probably either, like I said previously, depending on the amount, it would, if it's on the more side, then we would love to basically give a grant to another creator, like myself or a filmmaker, to be able to make something, and then I think that, with White Rabbit, sort of like completing the circle, it was made, and then, we were able to win some mainstream like recognition and awards for it. I think that is it's the first crypto project that has ever won an Emmy, and I hope it's not the last. And so, in order to basically keep evangelizing like Ethereum and keeping a positive like image of what Ethereum can enable and do out there, this is one of the ways that it could be done, is through high quality projects that are out there winning awards. And then through that, people learn about how like Ethereum is benefiting the space in terms of like cultural and high quality storytelling pieces. So that's one aspect. And then if, depending on the amount, if it's on like the lower side, then we would love to just host some free like theater screenings of White Rabbit the film, so that people like can go watch it, and then also bring one of the trophies to the screening as well, to basically signify that as a democratized producer role, we are all Emmy-winning producers, and you can go and like watch a free film, but also take a photo or go touch the trophy, whatever it is. I think that would be like our way, as kind of like a public good, or also giving back to the community. So those are like the main things that we have in store for like in terms of how we would use this funding.
Amazing. And Zach, what about you? What will this funding unlock?
Before I say, I just have to say, like, people don't quite understand how big of a coup it is that Emily won, like this project won an Emmy. Like, billions of dollars are poured into animation on streamers, and the fact that this like tiny project, in comparison, huge amount of effort, obviously won an Emmy is really incredible. It is really incredible. So it's like, and I think unless you're in this world, you don't quite understand, like you said, the millions of dollars that go into award campaigns. Like, it's not just Anora. Like, streamers pour hundreds of millions of dollars into award campaigns. Crazy. And often pay a lot less for the content. So it's not uncommon. The Nora's just the one that's public about it because it was an indie project. Like, that's just the norm. But for us, so I mean, if we're at like a $10,000 level, which so far we are, fingers crossed, we get to have a publicist, to bring on a publicist for the release. As we get up into these kind of higher, we could actually dive back into the vault and start coming out with new content that is really important, but just honestly have not had the resources or energy or time to like dive back in. All of our kind of resources have gone into just pure marketing. And then the more and more we have, the more we can actually work with influencers and kind of collaborators on the short form side to kind of create really exciting and interpretations of the film, or kind of empower them, basically, which is the best strategy, to like do something with it in their own way, with resources. So, if we can get into the higher kind of amounts, then we can really pay people to spend time and really create something new in kind of on the social media side. But yeah, like you said, Emily, if anyone emails us or direct DMs us, like, happy to share what we've been through and support new creatives who are early in this journey and want some advice, because I think we've all made a lot of mistakes and have found some successes. So the more we can share, the easier it will, hopefully, for the people that come next.
Absolutely. And I think, again, shout out to you and the Shibuya team, because an Emmy is rightly, like Zach said, like I don't think people realize the gravity of it, but also just what a freaking phenomenal win, right? Like the fact that we do have the first crypto project to win an Emmy, like that is not a headline I expected, or that you expect to typically hear when you think about the kind of headlines that do come out, right? And so that's just such a big win for the industry, for the Ethereum community as well. And I hope as well it is not the last one. And fingers crossed you both all get many, many, many more awards and recognition and the funding and resources to put all of your creative passion into the work that you do, and that helps our space too. So, fingers crossed for that. Again, for anyone watching, there is an absolute way for you to actually help with this aspect, which is quite literally allocate to both of them. We're going to put their links as a reply, and we're going to do a thank you tweet tagging obviously both accounts, but also adding links so that you can check out both films and check out all the links that we spoke about today. As a reminder, we are here with our demo day tomorrow again, so please do sign up for that too and watch it. And if you haven't allocated, please do, because it is a big missed opportunity if you don't, and your rewards get wasted and you're not going to be able to do anything about it after the 22nd of October. So please go do that. And then a couple of other reminders, because we are doing a bunch of things over at Octant. So we have our DeFi hackathon that's coming up on the 31st and this whole week until the 11th of November, and you can apply. So that's really fun. And we're coming up with the DeFi summit as well that we're going to be sharing more about today. So lots coming on this space. We're doing our best from the creator side to do as much as we can as well to support. And again, big thank you to the Ethereum Foundation Strategic Funding Coordination team, and to the EF for all of their support and collaborating with us for this Epoch. It's been so cool to see so many creators getting funded. And I'm so nervous about this Epoch too, because I feel so personally invested into all the projects, and I just have a special place in my heart for creatives as a whole. But I hope we get to see more epochs like this. I hope we get to see more funding. And again, Emily and Zach, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing so much, for being so candid in your responses and all of the advice, and for all of your support and contributions to this space.
Thank you, Mashal. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for allocating.
All right. Bye, folks. We will see you tomorrow in tomorrow's demo day then.
Bye.